Every analyst told you the same story. Canada would do what Canada always does.
Canada's next fighter was supposed to be a straightforward upgrade, a routine handoff from aging CF-18s to a new generation of jets built for the future. Yet the deeper this decision went, the more it exposed something far larger than a procurement file. Because behind the technical briefings and cost projections sat a fundamental question about sovereignty, survival, and who truly controls the skies over the Arctic when pressure rises. As new warnings surface from Washington and alternatives gain attention in Ottawa, the debate has shifted from performance charts to national leverage. And that shift is sending a clear signal not only to Canada, but also to the F-35 program itself. For years, the replacement of Canada's CF-18 fleet was framed as an administrative necessity, rather than a strategic crossroads. Yet the reality facing the Royal Canadian Air Force stretches far beyond replacing worn airframes. Canada patrols the second largest national airspace on the planet, spanning nearly 10 million square kilometers, much of it extending deep into the Arctic, where infrastructure thins out and weather patterns can ground even the most advanced equipment without warning. Russian long-range aviation activity near northern approaches has increased over the past decade. Arctic shipping lanes are becoming more strategically relevant as ice coverage recedes, and response times across those vast distances cannot depend on ideal conditions. When distances stretch into thousands of miles between operating bases and temperatures plunge well below freezing for extended periods, the debate shifts from pure capability toward endurance, autonomy, and survivability under stress. The Lockheed Martin's F-35 Lightning II was selected to replace the CF-18S in a deal covering 88 aircraft, a fleet intended to anchor Canadian air power for decades, while integrating seamlessly with allies under the North American Aerospace Defense Command and NATO structures. On paper, the aircraft delivers unmatched sensor fusion, stealth shaping designed to reduce radar cross-section, and the ability to gather and distribute battlefield information at a level previous generations could not approach. The F-35's software-driven architecture links radar, infrared sensors, electronic warfare systems, and data feeds into a unified picture that allows pilots to see threats before being seen. Its deep strike capability, combined with interoperability across allied fleets, offers clear advantages in coalition warfare scenarios where shared data and synchronized tactics define success. Yet that power rests on a tightly integrated ecosystem. The F-35's operational concept depends on secure logistics pipelines, regular software updates managed through centralized frameworks, mission data files curated within a multinational system, and reliable satellite communications to unlock its full potential. The Autonomic Logistics Information System, later transitioned into the Operational Data Integrated Network, was designed to track maintenance, parts availability, and fleet readiness across all operators. This structure allows unprecedented coordination, but it also embeds reliance on a broader network that extends beyond national borders. In stable environments with secure rear areas and uninterrupted digital infrastructure, that integration becomes a force multiplier. In contested environments where adversaries target satellites, cyber networks, and air bases in the opening hours of conflict, those dependencies become pressure points. Sweden's Saab JAS 39 Gripen emerged from a different strategic culture. Swedish defense planners built their Cold War doctrine around the assumption that major air bases would be among the first targets in any conflict, that command networks might fracture, and that reinforcements from abroad could not be guaranteed in the early stages of war. That mindset shaped the Gripen from its earliest design phases. The aircraft was engineered to operate from short and sometimes improvised runways, including stretches of highway prepared as dispersed operating bases. It can be refueled and rearmed by small ground crews using limited support equipment, allowing rapid turnaround in austere conditions. Its maintenance philosophy emphasizes accessibility and efficiency, enabling operations from locations that lack the heavy infrastructure often associated with high-end fighter fleets. The latest JAS E-39 Gripen E variant incorporates advanced avionics, an active electronically scanned array radar, and modern electronic warfare systems while preserving the dispersed basing concept that defines its identity. Saab has consistently highlighted the aircraft's lower operating cost compared to many twin-engine or heavily integrated competitors, with estimates often placing flight hour expenses well below those associated with fifth-generation platforms. For a country covering enormous distances with limited northern infrastructure, the ability to deploy aircraft to forward locations without constructing permanent high-cost facilities carries strategic value that cannot be measured solely in stealth metrics. In Canada's Arctic, extreme cold degrades hydraulics, affects battery performance, and complicates maintenance cycles. Supply chains stretch thin as equipment moves through remote regions where transport windows depend on weather. Satellite coverage, while extensive, cannot be assumed to remain uninterrupted in a high-end conflict, where space assets may be targeted. In such conditions, redundancy becomes more than a planning buzzword. It becomes a survival mechanism, an aircraft capable of relocating quickly, operating with smaller support teams, and sustaining missions even when digital links degrade fits naturally into a distributed defense model tailored for geography rather than theory. The contrast between the F-35 and the Gripen therefore extends beyond technical comparisons and moves into doctrine. One approach concentrates capability into a highly networked platform optimized for coalition integration and first strike dominance. The other spreads operational flexibility across a design intended to remain functional even when central coordination weakens. Neither philosophy exists in isolation, and modern air forces increasingly acknowledge the need for both high-end strike power and resilient distributed presence. The tension arises when budgets, political commitments, and alliance structures push decision-makers toward a single path that may not fit every operational reality equally well. Control over mission data and software updates has also become part of the discussion. The F-35 program operates within a multinational framework that standardizes upgrades, electronic warfare libraries, and integration timelines across partner nations. This ensures compatibility, but limits unilateral modifications. Operators do not independently rewrite core software or integrate weapons without navigating established approval channels. Saab's export model for the Gripen emphasizes national control, offering customers greater authority over mission data files, electronic warfare configurations, and weapons integration choices. For Canada, a country balancing close defense cooperation with the United States against domestic political pressures for autonomy, that distinction resonates beyond the technical level. Economic considerations further complicate the equation. The total projected cost of Canada's F-35 program has risen by roughly $8 billion over the past 3 years, intensifying scrutiny from policymakers concerned about long-term budget sustainability. Rising expenses do not automatically negate capability, but they amplify political sensitivity when defense spending competes with domestic priorities. Saab has proposed assembling the Gripen in Canada, projecting the creation of 12,600 domestic jobs tied to manufacturing and supply chain participation. Such promises intertwine national security with industrial policy, transforming aircraft selection into a referendum on economic leverage as much as military doctrine. As Ottawa initiated a review of the F-35 contract amid these cost increases and broader tensions with Washington, the debate escalated beyond internal policy circles. President Donald Trump's administration applied tariff pressure on multiple allies during disputes over trade and strategic alignment, contributing to a climate in which procurement decisions carry diplomatic weight. Prime Minister Mark Carney called for reassessment to ensure that the investment aligned with Canada's security and economic interests, framing the issue as one of responsible governance rather than confrontation. Industry Minister Melanie Joly emphasized that major defense acquisitions should reinforce sovereignty while generating domestic employment, underscoring a growing expectation that security spending produce tangible national returns. The response from Washington arrived with unusual bluntness. U.S. Ambassador to Canada Pete Hoekstra warned that if Canada reduced or abandoned its commitment to purchasing 88 F-35 aircraft from Lockheed Martin, structural adjustments within the North American Aerospace Defense Command could follow. NORAD, established during the Cold War as a binational command to defend North American airspace, already permits both countries to operate within each other's airspace to identify and intercept threats. Hoekstra suggested that a diminished Canadian fighter fleet would create capability gaps, requiring the United States to increase its own operations over Canadian territory, potentially expanding the scope of cross-border activity and prompting revisions to long-standing agreements. Such statements transformed a procurement review into a sovereignty debate. The implication that American aircraft might patrol Canadian skies more frequently if Ottawa pursued an alternative platform raised questions about leverage within the alliance framework. While NORAD has always embodied shared responsibility, the prospect of increased U.S. operational presence due to Canadian fleet decisions introduced political sensitivity. Defense cooperation between the two nations remains deep and historically resilient. Yet the warning signaled that aircraft choice intersects directly with command structure and continental defense posture. From the American perspective, interoperability remains central. The F-35's strength lies in its ability to integrate seamlessly across allied forces, sharing data in real time and operating within standardized tactical frameworks. A fleet dominated by F-35 operators simplifies coordination during joint missions and reduces compatibility friction. Introducing a different platform such as the Gripen into that ecosystem may not eliminate cooperation, but it complicates the architecture. Hoekstra argued that a less interoperable aircraft could weaken shared defense capabilities and force the United States to compensate for reduced alignment, emphasizing that Washington would need to determine how to replace any lost capability. Yet the counter-argument centers on resilience rather than uniformity. Concentrating air defense into a single highly complex platform increases efficiency in stable conditions, but may expose vulnerabilities when adversaries target infrastructure and networks early. Distributed operations, supported by aircraft capable of functioning from dispersed locations with reduced logistical footprints, offer an alternative hedge. The Gripen's design aligns with that concept, allowing smaller detachments to operate from multiple launch points and complicate an adversary's targeting calculus. In such a model, advanced stealth platforms retain their role while lighter, more autonomous fighters maintain presence and absorb initial pressure. The broader NATO landscape reflects similar conversations. Fixed air bases are increasingly viewed as early targets in any peer conflict scenario, susceptible to precision strikes aimed at cratering runways, destroying fuel storage, and disabling maintenance facilities. Air forces are investing in rapid runway repair capabilities, mobile command posts, and dispersed basing strategies to counter that threat. Aircraft optimized for flexible operations enhance those efforts by reducing dependence on pristine infrastructure. As planners reassess assumptions about secure rear areas, the appeal of platforms designed around decentralization grows. Canada's deliberation therefore carries symbolic weight beyond its borders. When a G7 nation with vast territory and close ties to the United States evaluates alternatives to a flagship American defense program, smaller allies observe closely. Budget-constrained air forces operating in remote environments consider whether diversification strengthens resilience. The message transmitted by the Gripen's presence in the conversation does not revolve around outperforming the F-35 in stealth metrics or sensor sophistication. It revolves around endurance, autonomy, and the capacity to sustain operations when the battlefield refuses to cooperate with centralized planning. The F-35 remains a formidable aircraft with capabilities unmatched in many domains, and no serious defense analyst dismisses its value in modern coalition warfare. At the same time, survivability under prolonged disruption requires more than advanced software and low observable shaping. It demands flexibility in basing, redundancy in logistics, and confidence that national operators retain control over critical systems during crises. Balancing these factors defines the complexity of Canada's decision. As discussions continue, the signal has already resonated. Aircraft procurement no longer appears as a routine replacement cycle, but as a strategic declaration about how a nation intends to defend its territory and define its role within alliances. The Gripen's presence in the debate underscores that resilience can compete with dominance as a guiding principle. The F-35 supporters emphasize unmatched integration and technological edge. Advocates of diversification highlight independence and distributed survivability. Both visions seek to secure the same airspace, yet they reflect different assessments of future conflict. Meanwhile, the warning from Washington lingers over the conversation, elevating stakes and sharpening lines. The suggestion that American fighters could expand operations over Canadian territory if the F-35 purchase falters has injected urgency into a debate once framed as technical and administrative. With projected program costs rising by approximately $8 billion over 3 years and industrial benefits offered by Saab promising thousands of domestic jobs, the choice now intersects with economics, sovereignty, and alliance politics in equal measure. Under NORAD's long-standing framework, cooperation has defined continental defense for decades, yet structural adjustments remain possible if fleet composition changes. The question facing Ottawa extends beyond which jet patrols the Arctic skies. It touches on who holds the decisive influence when capability gaps appear and how much control a nation is willing to delegate within an integrated defense architecture. By the time this debate reaches its conclusion, the signal coming from the JAS 39 Gripen is rooted in something deeper than performance statistics or procurement politics, because it speaks directly to Canada's ability to defend an immense and unforgiving expanse of territory on its own terms, without depending entirely on centralized systems that may not hold up under pressure. At the same time, it quietly challenges the F-35 program by questioning whether dominance built around tight integration and complex infrastructure can remain reliable when runways are damaged, satellites are contested, and supply chains are strained. For NATO allies watching closely, the broader takeaway is impossible to ignore, as resilience, dispersal, and operational flexibility are beginning to stand alongside stealth and sensor fusion as equal pillars of modern air power. What began as a fighter replacement plan in Ottawa has evolved into a larger conversation about sovereignty, alliance structure, economic leverage, and strategic identity. And whatever path Canada ultimately chooses will ripple through NORAD planning rooms, defense industries, and Arctic patrol patterns for decades. Because when the assumptions shaping continental defense begin to evolve, the structure resting on them inevitably evolves as well. Now, the real question turns to those watching this unfold. Should Canada prioritize deep integration with the United States through the F-35, even if that means accepting higher costs and tighter structural alignment within a centralized framework? Or does a platform like the Gripen offer a smarter hedge for Arctic operations, where dispersed basing and national control could prove decisive? Does interoperability outweigh autonomy in a crisis, or is a diversified fleet the more realistic path in an era where networks and infrastructure are prime targets? And if Washington is willing to reconsider NORAD's structure over a procurement choice, what does that reveal about the future balance of power inside long-standing alliances? Share thoughts in the comments. If this breakdown brought value, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so future deep dives into military technology, global power shifts, and strategic decisions do not slip by. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one.